And the award for the most ill-prepared mob member goes to... Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. As part of the 2021 edition of my 13 Nights of Halloween series, today I'm going to be talking about the 2021 slasher sequel, Halloween Kills. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All of my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Halloween Kills stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Anthony Michael Hall, and Will Patton, and was directed by David Gordon Green. Set immediately after the events of Halloween 2018, it tells the story of Laurie Strode and the people of Haddonfield, who must try to find and stop Michael Myers before he kills again. Once again, Michael Myers is back. 12 movies, 43 years, and this franchise is still kicking. Horror franchises are, admittedly, often known for their longevity and inconsistency, but even by horror standards, this is pretty impressive. Halloween Kills serves as the follow-up and direct sequel to Halloween 2018. We've had a few instances of direct sequels in this gloriously confusing multi-timeline franchise, but this marks only the second time that a director has come back to finish what they started. And I'm happy to say that this is a much stronger effort than the previous instance of that. As I said, Halloween Kills is a direct sequel to Halloween 2018, which in itself was a direct sequel to the original 1978 Halloween, foregoing the other 9 movies that came out in the interim. But Halloween Kills is more than just a sequel. It's a continuation. It's more of The Night He Came Home. Again. Despite the multitude of sequels in this franchise, this idea of a direct continuation was only done once before with Halloween 2. But whereas that film picked up with the story in a way that could be grasped even by newcomers, Halloween Kills is a different beast altogether. This is a second chapter that depends upon the first chapter for context. Story, characters, motivations, these are all things that will be lost on those who haven't seen Halloween 2018. Even though this film is a direct continuation of Halloween 2018, temporally speaking, aside from some flashback sequences, it approaches things in an unusual way. It takes place on the same night and involves many of the same characters, but the focus has shifted. Rather than being a story that continues the Laurie versus Michael plotline or advances the family legacy themes put forward by the previous film, Halloween Kills spreads itself out. It continues with only the most basic idea of needing to stop Michael Myers. But instead of being about Michael or Laurie or her family, this film at least attempts to be about Haddonfield. I mentioned before that the story focus has shifted here, but it might actually be more accurate to say that the story's fairly unfocused here. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as messy, because the pieces do all fit together to form a narrative, but it's not really one that feels like a logical follow-up to what we got in Halloween 2018. This film jumps around a lot. Not only do we get flashbacks, so jumps in time, but we also get a bunch of different story threads. In the previous film, we had the Laurie side of the story, and also the teen side, but the focus is further split here. We've got Laurie, her family, Michael, and several groups of people across the town. The film, bizarrely, almost gives equal focus to each of these pieces, seemingly haphazardly cutting among the stories with some noticeably rough editing. Because of this divergence, and the broadening of the scope to Haddonfield as a whole, this film also does some unusual things with its characters. First off, there are a lot of them. We see all the surviving players from the last film, but we also get many, many more as the citizens of Haddonfield get pulled into the mix. There are plenty that serve mostly as nameless, faceless extras within the growing mob, but a surprising number receive characterization and subplots that both story focus and runtime get devoted to. I'm all for fleshing out characters, especially in horror movies, but it's done at the expense of existing characters here. Most of the characters you would expect this film to focus on are frustratingly sidelined here. Honestly, it's bizarre. This movie doesn't really add to the story or character arcs that were set up in the last film. Stuff happens, but it doesn't feel integral. It might once we see what happens in Halloween Ends, but on its own, Halloween Kills feels more like a mildly entertaining filler chapter. So, how can filler be entertaining? Well, just because it's filler doesn't mean there's no killer. I gotta say, Halloween Kills lives up to its name. This movie is surprisingly brutal. I mean, it is a Halloween film, so we expect Michael Myers to do his thing. And Halloween 2018 wasn't lacking in blood, but this film ups the intensity. It's extremely bloody and fairly gory at times. While never quite reaching Rob Zombie levels, this film is a good deal more mean-spirited and tonally nasty with its kills than its predecessor was. There's still the occasional moment of levity or old-fashioned fun slasher moment, but most of the kills here don't have that cheer for Michael feel to them. He's always mowed down anybody who got in his path, and has had some convoluted and creative kills over the years. But outside of the Rob Zombie movies, I can't recall him ever taking quite so much pleasure in killing as he does here. Minor characterization discrepancies aside, this film, once again, does a really good job of drawing upon the other films in the franchise. I don't think this nostalgic connection element is quite as well done as it was in Halloween 2018, but the intentional nods are sure to please franchise fans. Much like its immediate predecessor, this film traces its roots back to the original 1978 Halloween. But rather than tonal emulation and scene references, this film draws upon the story and characters. I'm not going to spoil who we see, but there are a number of familiar faces that pop up here, many of which serve as more than just cameos. But the film harks back to plenty of other movies in the franchise too. Halloween 2 with its direct continuation and hospital setting, Halloween 3 with the silver shamrock masks, Halloween 4 with its mob attempting vigilante justice, Halloween 5 with its memorable weapon of choice, the Rob Zombie films with their mean-spirited brutality and gore, and of course, Halloween 2018 with its story setup. Halloween Kills is a little confusing. As a sequel within the Halloween franchise, it's pretty good. There are certainly many other films in this franchise that are worse, or more ridiculous and convoluted. But as a follow-up to Halloween 2018, this feels like a step down. Not a huge step. This isn't the utter catastrophe that early reactions seem to imply, but the filmmaking quality is noticeably poorer, and the story just doesn't deliver on what the predecessor teased. Unfulfilled expectations are the viewer's problem, but I can't help but feel like this is a bit of a stalled out stepping stone movie. It's certainly better than Halloween 5, which served a similar function, but I have a feeling that this is a movie that'll only be able to be fully appreciated as part of this 3, or technically 4, film sequence, rather than as its own individual movie. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 has gotta be the kills. Surprisingly, I think this is the first time that I've included this as a pro for any of my Halloween reviews. I'm not really sure if that's indicative of this film having exceptionally good kills, or it just means that it doesn't really have a ton of other great positives for me. In either case, this movie is pretty brutal. It almost borders on being too much at times, like the Rob Zombie films, but it doesn't ever fully cross that line. Michael is a little weirdly sadistic in a few moments, but the creativity of most of the kills keep this one interesting. Plus, fans of the franchise, or of slashers in general, will find that they have plenty of good blood and gore to sink their teeth into. The second pro is one that this film shares with its immediate predecessor. In that review, I referred to it as the homage element, so I'll stick with that terminology here too. I'll admit that it's not quite as strong as it was in Halloween 2018, but I still really appreciated all of the references, Easter eggs, and callbacks to the other films in this franchise. This one is a little bit more in your face regarding returning characters, but people who either haven't seen or just aren't very familiar with the other films probably won't be able to tell. I'm not sure that I liked what they did with one of these characters in particular, but I appreciated seeing the familiar faces. I also really enjoyed all the little connections to the other films that are no longer even technically part of this timeline. Again, I think it shows just how much the filmmakers like and care about this franchise. On the con side, the biggest issue here is the story. Now, I do have to say that I don't hate the pieces that are included in this particular plot. My issue here really stems from the fact that this film doesn't seem to contribute all that much in terms of plot advancement, and it sidelines almost all of the characters we care about. It's not awful, but it doesn't really amount to all that much. It kind of just exists. Especially as a follow up to Halloween 2018, this movie truly feels like filler. Again, I'm not saying that this makes it a bad movie, and I'm not even saying that every single thing that happens in this movie is unnecessary filler. It just has this very distinct feel of a stepping stone movie. It's here to bridge the gap between the first movie that introduced the story and characters, or I suppose reintroduced, and the last movie where we're gonna inevitably get some sort of big showdown. Con number 2 is the editing. This is partly the result of having a fairly unfocused story with a whole bunch of moving pieces, but even with a story that jumps all over the place with groups of characters, it's still possible to edit things together in a reasonable way. But that doesn't really happen here. It all feels extremely haphazard. Like I mentioned before, there is a narrative that can be followed, but the almost randomly ordered clips certainly don't make that any easier. The third con is one that this film shares with its predecessor, the dialogue. Luckily, I think there's only one instance of referring to Laurie as grandmother here, but unfortunately, that's not the only issue. Much like the structure of this film, quite a bit of the dialogue just comes across as clunky. Not all of it, but a lot of it sounds unnatural and frequently overdramatic. Granted, this is the franchise that had Mr. Overdramatic himself, Dr. Loomis, but he was just one character. In this movie, pretty much everybody has Loomis levels of drawn-out, dramatic, philosophical pontification on the nature of evil. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Halloween Kills or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Halloween Kills 3 out of 5 paws. It's got some fun connections and some bloody kills, but the story is surprisingly unfocused, sidelining characters who should be the highlight of the movie. In the grand scheme of the Halloween franchise, this is a more than decent installment, but as a follow-up to Halloween 2018, it's a little underwhelming. I would recommend Halloween Kills, perhaps very obviously, to fans of the Halloween franchise. Although it kinda does its own thing, I do think that there's enough here, especially in terms of connections, to please big fans of the franchise. This is a movie that's very dependent on your knowledge of the events and characters of Halloween 2018. So if you haven't seen that film yet, this might be a confusing and unfulfilling experience. Likewise, if you didn't like Halloween 2018, I don't think this movie is going to do anything to change your opinion of this current, soon-to-be trilogy in the series. If you liked Halloween Kills, I would recommend Halloween 2018. This is about as obvious of a suggestion as it gets, but this latest movie is a direct continuation of the 2018 film. It's set on the same night, features many of the same characters, and is essentially chapter 1 of an eventual 3-part revival trilogy. If you like the idea of a direct continuation sequel, you've got to check out Halloween 2. The original 1981 edition. That film has been retconned and altogether ignored in this current timeline, but it followed the continuing adventures of Laurie and Michael on that fated Halloween night in 1978. And if you like the focus on Haddonfield's residence here, you might want to watch Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. It's not a great movie, but it is one of the better sequels in this fairly inconsistent franchise. The general story is a little bit different, but Michael has got some strangely creative and scheming kills, plus the townsfolk once again decide to form a mob. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Halloween Kills? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what bizarre household item would you bring to the mob hunting down Michael Myers? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa, with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.